I know the other panel was fantastic, but I'm going to tell you, my ladies are the best. They really are. No, not that we're competitive and we always want to win, but these ladies are really terrific. And so let me just tell you who we've got up on stage here briefly. We have my good friend Lisa Reese. And, you know, one of the things is really the women up here, if you want somebody to write something really good, if you want to be on TV, if you have a financial question or a legal question, we've got it covered up here. Let me tell you. So first we've got Lisa, who is the president and publisher of our Pensacola News Journal. And next to her, we have the wonderful Christina Doss, the managing director of Saltmarsh. We have the wonderful Amy Remington, general counsel for Landrum. And then Kimberly Wyatt, the news director for WEAR TV. So please give them a huge round of applause before we get started. Now, as you heard from Sherry, my name is Rachel Gillette, and you have the program with all of our bios, so we're not going to go into that in detail, but I've asked the ladies if they would share a fun fact about themselves that's not in their bio, and I'm going to kickstart that by letting you know that I'm not actually from here. You may not have noticed, but I'm from a little place a bit further north and a bit further east. I took the journey west that we heard about this morning as well. It's a little place called Liverpool. It's next to Manchester, not Manchester, New Hampshire. That's Manchester, England. And I love football. That's the kind that you actually kick. I drink tea, and that's hot tea with milk. And I like water. And that's the worst thing that I always have difficulty with over here. When I ask for water, people look at me and they say, water? I say, yes, water. Oh, you mean water. So I always say that I have two languages. I'm proficient in one and I'm learning American. So Lisa, tell us something about you that's a fun fact and maybe not on your bio.
Okay, well, interestingly, I actually started off as an art major and majored in art my first 3 years in college. My boyfriend and I at the time were both in the art school. We broke up. His brother was in the business school, so I decided to head over to the business school, and not for his brother, just out of revenge. I took an accounting class. It was probably the thing that I fell in love with the most. People still look at me like, art, accounting, how does that even work? But it really did for me. So I ended up with an accounting degree, a business degree, a major in accounting, and a minor in math. And so I like to look at myself as a very creative, where colorful meets logical. I took those two elements and blended them and try and do that every day in my career.
Wow, thank you, Lisa. And Christina?
So I am the daughter, spouse, and mother of career military Marines. My husband always tells me you need to specify Marines, and all war veterans. Thank you. So I've certainly had the challenges of balancing family life, getting an education, the career responsibilities. I've moved over 25 times, but interestingly enough, I've been here in Pensacola the past 30 years. So if you do the math, I actually moved more than 25, 24, 23 times in my first 25 or so years. And we actually here in Pensacola have been in now the same house for the past 18 years. I used to be a master packer, now we're just master pack rats.
Thank you. Amy?
Okay, so my fun fact really has to do, like the panel earlier was saying, who you are and just owning it, and who I am as a big geek. And I'm really okay with that. And by way of example, my fun fact was that my husband and I have watched every single presidential debate this year from beginning to end, and that's what we consider a good time at our house.
Wow.
It's a true story. And here's the better part of it. Our kids love to join in, and they all have opinions, and they're all different opinions, and that's kind of an amazing thing, actually. So.
Fantastic. Kimberly, tell us something about you.
And there was me. I love to dance. I love Twitter. I am an extremely powerful leader, but I am very shy. So doing this today, I told my team, oh my goodness, how am I going to get through this? I feel like I'm sweating, but I'm very shy. And then another thing, a fun fact, I am the first female and Black African American to lead the WEAR newsroom.
I told you they were good. How fantastic is that? So the topic today that we're going to be talking about, and Sherry mentioned it briefly, is we've got the fun title of Juggling Whilst Climbing a Mountain. And that title came about during our discussions that we've got so many things on our plate, we're trying to juggle so many things, but we also want to really reach the top, climb the mountain, and get to the top. So bearing that in mind, each of you has a demanding career and a variety of other commitments in addition to that career. Can you tell us and tell the audience one reason why you pursue additional roles and responsibilities in leadership? Who wants to start? Lisa?
Sure. Well, I'm going to bring it to where I'm at now in my career. So I came here from, this first time I've ever been to the South, so I'm new here. Moved here from Pittsburgh, grew up in Ohio. So I've been here 6 months. So the way I look at it now is these other opportunities are windows to my community. You know, in the past, leadership roles may have been pursuing passions or to network or to meet new people, or to, you know, do something amazing and brilliant. But if you really combine it all now, especially being new, where I knew no one, I have no one, came down here all by myself, I think Kimberly did too, and it's a window to my community. It's an opportunity for me to meet new people, for people to meet me, and to understand each other's talents and gifts. So that's why I'm looking at, you know, at those other leadership roles now.
So for me, honestly, I have a very non-linear career path. I didn't start my career until I was 31 years old. I was a stay-home mom. And I really wasn't looking to be a leader. But sometimes when you look in terms of what excites you and really gets you engaged, what I have found for me, it's the creative license that I get with taking on leadership roles. And the majority of the leadership roles that I've been in actually didn't even exist until I took them. I got the opportunity to work for a financial services firm early in my career who was really breaking ground with new advice offerings and solutions. And so every new role that I took was something that hadn't happened before. And honestly, I just raised my hand. I just said, I'd like to try that. I'd like to do that because it gave me that creative license to really take the lead and do it my way. And I guess it goes back to kind of wanting it your way and wanting to be maybe a little bossy and how you shape it.
So when I was younger, if somebody asked me to do something, I always said yes. And I figured out pretty quickly that a lot of these things that I said yes to weren't meaningful to me and maybe didn't have a lot of purpose or passion for me. And so as I got older, I started saying no a lot more often and only said yes to the things I was passionate about and good at. And I figured out that it's okay not to be good at stuff. Like, as an example, my church asked me to teach Sunday school, and I was wildly unsuccessful. I could not do that. I was no good. Hats off to teachers. I could not do that. But you know what? They also asked me 20 years ago to be the chancellor of the church, which is basically the free lawyer. So for the past 20 years, I've been the chancellor for the church, the diocese, and the school. And that I love, and I'm pretty good at it, and it's really meaningful to me to be able to give something back. So now, when I'm looking at leadership, I ask myself, do I have the time for it? Am I passionate about it? Am I going to be good at it? Because if the answer for those three are not yes, then probably somebody else should do it who can do a better job.
And I follow that by passion. I don't need the pay. I don't need any of that. Am I going to make a difference? And I do what I do every day. Normally, last week was about a 75-hour week for me. If I know that I'm going to keep someone safe, make a difference in their life, or be able to sit and have tea with a student that is trying to get where I am, then I can do that. Another thing, if you're coming up in your career, say yes if you're passionate about it. You never know who's watching you. So if you say yes, that person may call you 10 years later and offer you a job. Also watch your attitude as you say yes. Attitude defines a winner.
Great advice. Thank you, ladies. And I think that kind of follows to the next point that I'd like to discuss is about finding yourself in a leadership role that you didn't necessarily have your eye on. So we've talked a little bit about today of knowing what you want to pursue and going out there and going after it and pursuing it. But we also heard a question from a young lady who said, well, I have an idea, but I'm not quite sure. So did you ever find yourself in a leadership role that you didn't necessarily choose or pursue? If so, how did you get there, and how did you deal with that situation?
Well, I'll take that one first. One of my second job out of law school is to work for Casey Rogers, who's now our federal judge, and she's just the smartest person I've ever met. And we had a project one time, and she couldn't do it because of her schedule, so she said, you need to do this for me. And it was a public speaking event, and I said, well, gosh, I'm not good at that. I don't really like public speaking, and I don't understand the topic. And she said, well, great, you've got 5 hours to figure it out, and then you need to be at Fort Walton Beach. And so I did it, and guess what? I loved it. I mean, I thought it was great. I love the energy of learning something new. I love the energy of sharing it with people. I love the challenge of answering questions and then figuring out the answers if I didn't happen to know the questions then. And since then, I've done quite a bit of public speaking, and I really, really enjoy it because I enjoy the energy from the audience. But I would have never done that had Casey not just kind of let me sink or swim. And thankfully, I swam, but, could have gone the other way, I guess.
Yeah, I'll speak to that too. So much like her, I look at it as a positive experience. I'm coming, again, that diverse background in the art and then the accounting. And of course, I spent a lot of the beginning of my career in an accounting role as a CFO, and got into the media industry and continued that. When I was about 6 years into my last role up in Pittsburgh with a media company, my publisher, the publisher there, left. And I was named an interim publisher. Now, here I am, right? I love my career. I mean, there isn't anything I don't know at this point about finance and about media. And when you work in the finance department, well, any finance department, you know everything about that organization because everything ends up in accounting. Everything. So if you're pursuing an accounting degree, it's a great prep to learn everything about the entire organization. So publisher leaves, and they put me in this interim role, and I am basically terrified because I have no idea, number one, what I'm doing. I have no idea what to do or how to do it. I don't have a plan. I didn't expect it. And I really didn't expect to, to be put in that interim role. And 6 months later, they came back and they said, we want you to continue doing this. We want to offer you this job. We have confidence that you can lead this team, that you can do great things. And I didn't show that I was hesitant, but I was, because I just was so afraid of letting go of something I love so much. So, today here it is 2016, and now I'm 5 years, into a career on the publishing side of things because I didn't let it terrify me. I had to lean into it. I had to figure out how to take that creativity and that in my accounting background and my leadership skills and put them to use a different way. And that's, I think that's really important because one of the things you'll learn as you go through your careers is you have to be nimble and you have to be flexible and you have to be willing, right, to step outside of something that even if you love it, you may discover something else that you're really good at.
Yeah, I'm going to tag on to that and say, have I ever been in leadership roles that I didn't expect? And the answer is yes, frequently. without getting into all the details, one of the most comical ones was actually one where I was asked by way of an invitation written on a napkin to develop a stock options consultation for the firm, Charles Schwab and Company. And it was because there were so many lawsuits out there around inappropriate advice on stock options. I knew nothing about stock options. But the bottom line was this. When that was offered to me on a napkin, the answer was, yes, I will take this. And it was simply a matter of getting project teams together and making things happen. We had an 18-month timeline and we had to get it done. But the reason why, and this is what's more important, the reason why I was asked was because early on in my career, I had probably subconsciously started to build my personal image and my brand, which was around things you've already heard today, about being flexible, adaptable, about being a positive individual, about being a collaborator, about being a team player, and about working really ahead of your pay grade and being willing to do that, at least for a time. There's a time for negotiating, certainly for that salary increase, but you want to prove yourself first. And that's something that over the course of my career, I have made darn sure that I am seen as a go-to person, that I am dependable and reliable and will get things done. And bottom line, that you get results.
Same here with me. Basically, I was in the news. I've been in the news business 26 years. And I believe I was producing a congressional debate. I'm not sure what I was doing, but all I know is I had two bosses, and I saw them being escorted out of the office. I had no clue why. And within 30 minutes, I was named interim news director. And I had a huge responsibility, a multi-million-dollar budget, all of these employees that, initially were, friends, but also when I was in the trenches, I let my coworkers know that I was a leader. So I set the tone there. So when I was moved up, I went into a room no one knew, and I cried my eyeballs out. It's true, I'm gonna confess. And I cried, I'm not ready for this. And I had to respond. I went back in, dried my face, put on makeup, and I said, I'll give you an answer tomorrow. And I prayed about it, and I knew that I could do it, so I walked back in, and the next day, so what I do, basically I took the job opportunity, and now 10 years later, I still hold the same position. I've done corporate work, ESPN, a lot of things, but the takeaway for me is when you're fearful of something, that's the time when you need to do it. And when the hurricanes came last week, I was really tired. I was dealing with corporate things, but I had to focus on keeping my community safe. I went in my office, put on my lipstick, and I told my 70 employees what they needed to do. I didn't have time to complain. So find that one thing that keeps you safe. Mine is my lipstick. I did that, and I moved forward.
I love it. So I'm just going to share with you something from my own experience. And it's really about my journey and what brought me here. When I was younger, I thought that I was going to be a lawyer, a barrister, those people that wear the funny white wigs and the gowns and appear in court in England. And so that was the career path that I pursued. I went to a college and I did a law degree, and I went to the Inns of Court in London, and I became a barrister. And I was firmly set on that path and thinking that I was going to be a judge. And one day got the opportunity to go on vacation to the British Virgin Islands. Little did I know that that journey was going to cause a complete change in my life and my career path, because I would meet the love of my life down there. My husband, as we moored our sailboats up next to each other in the anchorage, our eyes met and we fell in love. And that was in 2000. So here I am. I moved here in 2002. And similarly, the only person that I knew was my husband and the realtor who helped us buy our house. I didn't know a single person. And I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to make the adjustment? My law degree I'd have to do all over again. I couldn't simply take the bar. So I decided I was going to get involved in the community, and we've heard a lot about that from all of our speakers today. And I began volunteering at the Ronald McDonald House. and became the volunteer of the year there, and was then offered a role when a position became open, and I stepped up for that. It was in fundraising and event management. I didn't know anything about that. All I'd ever done was the law. But it was offered to me, and I thought I'd take a leap of faith. And then I joined an organization called Pensacola Young Professionals, who've been hugely influential in my life, and I'm grateful to see a lot of you in the audience today. And loved that organization, met a lot of people through it. And I said to myself, if ever a role comes out here in the Young Professionals organization, I want that. Well, it was run by volunteers completely at the time, and they didn't have any staff. But about 2 or 3 years later, a role came up, and I said, I want it. I want to be the executive director, and I applied, along with 200 other people, but I got the job. And then 5 years into that, I was volunteering through Pensacola Young Professionals to do some work for Quint Studer. And after volunteering and helping him with some of the leadership training and development that he was doing, and he knew that was a passion of mine, he offered me a role at the Studer Community Institute. And so I had talked with Quint a couple of years earlier about my life and what I wanted to do with it. And I told him that my passion was just intentionally making a difference in the community. And that the role that I have now didn't exist then. But when it did exist, he offered it to me because he knew that that was my passion. And so I'm so grateful for that and for the journey that I've been on. But the lesson that I would like you to take away is that maybe you don't know where you're going, maybe you do, but just be aware that things will always change and be willing to take on new opportunities. And so that kind of leads into the next question that I'd like my panelists to answer, is that one of my passions is personal and professional development. What sources do you turn to for training and development and personal and professional development in your roles?
I can take that first. So certainly, when you work in the corporate environment, generally speaking, you're going to have exposure and opportunity to just exceptional training, both technical and professional training, and I certainly did have that. But on a personal level, I very much focused on building my mentoring and coaching network, both female and male. It's important to have both, because both will have different perspectives and you will learn from both. I think it's also important that you focus on being proactive around asking for feedback, particularly asking for constructive and critical feedback. It's nice to get the atta-girls, right, and the atta-boys, but it's very rare for people to dig deeper and to ask, what can I do better? What could I do more? That's where you will learn more. But you will have to ask, because there aren't very many people that are comfortable giving that constructive feedback. Importantly, you have to learn how to take the feedback and what to do with it. You may not always agree with it, and that's okay, but at least process it and learn from it. I'll tell you, in my career, though, probably the best source of learning that put me on my present career path was when I raised my hand and asked for the opportunity to participate in training that was actually not intended for me. At the time, I was supporting a team of executives for the Southeast Division, and these were high-level, C-level executives, and I was their training manager. They were going to be attending a year-long Carter Leadership Executive Forum program in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as a Harvard Business School on interpersonal negotiations. And I asked them if I could participate with them. And frankly, I think they were a little stunned, but there was a little extra money in the budget, and they said yes. That changed the dynamics of our relationship, because for a year, we were peer-to-peer discussions, and that ultimately changed my career path because they started to look at me differently. I was one of them. So my counsel to you is, don't be afraid to ask. The answer may be no, and that's okay, but it may be yes. You may be surprised.
So as time's flying, I want to just ask one final question before we move on to our Q&A. In terms of juggling many roles, what advice would you give our audience members, Kimberly, on that? How do you deal with lots of competing things? I think at some points we've heard that having the ability to multitask is a skill, but I think now we're hearing more about being able to focus as being something that's perhaps more valued. What do you think?
I think what I do, I don't know if my mic is on, but what I do is beyond multitasking. I don't even know how I do it. But the big thing that I do is I'm a scheduler. I suggest that if you are a student or if you're in your mid-level career, schedule time for you and don't let anyone interrupt that time. And when I have that time, there's very few times ever that I'm able to even shut my door, or ever that I shut my door. But if you're going to invest in yourself and be able to schedule time to invest in your career, invest in your team, you have to schedule that time. Always know your mission, be calm, and be consistent. Those are things that I focus on. And also, I make a list. I always have the tyranny of the urgent, but I know exactly what I need to do every day when I come in. And I keep a calendar, an electronic and manual.
Lisa, what would you say?
Learn how to stack. So, you're going to figure out, and they tell the story about the glass and the sand and the rocks and, what's important and what's not. And, things like emails, there's all kinds of things that are going to get in your way that are going to flood into you, every day of your career. And that's just from the job side, not from the personal side, right? But you have to learn how to stack on the personal side too, and balance. But learn what is most important and look at those rocks. And those are the most important things. And don't allow the little things to get in the way of your rocks.
Well, I do, every morning I tell myself, and it was part of my Lenten discipline, as a matter of fact, for this period of the year, I decide on 2 goals for the day. And the goals might be personal or they might be professional, but they're just 2 simple goals. And so if I can accomplish those 2 goals at the end of the day, then I can check the box that I've done that. And it may be something like, finish this presentation or do such and such at work, or it may be something personal like, take 30 minutes and go run, or don't forget to make the kids' dentist appointments. But whatever it is, it's 2 simple goals during the day that are important, the most important things to me during that day. And then when I get to work, the first thing I do is I take, because I'm a list maker too, I love a good list. And I love Post-it notes, and I love colors and file tabs. I love organization. But I sit down and I write my top 3 priorities. And I have to accomplish those top 3 priorities before I leave for the day.
Yeah, I'll tag on to that. I think that we're probably all list makers to an extent, but we're probably not procrastinators around the things that are really important. And so when you look in terms of, I make my list at the end of every day, knowing when I come into work, what are the 2 things that I have to get done that day? And I don't leave until I get it done. But on the personal side, I will tell you, learning from experience, don't neglect the things that are really valuable to you. I traveled for so much of my career all over the country and spent 75% of the time on the road. And so family was very important. I made sure that I budgeted time, and it became a matter of budgeting. But I didn't budget time for friends. And I will tell you, especially for you women out there, make time for your friends and value those friends and make them a priority, because they will come back and add so much to your life throughout your personal life and your career over time, that it's something that I would encourage you now, make sure that you're very attentive to that.
So I think I'm getting the signal that we're ready for some questions from the audience. Do we have somebody who has some questions? I see somebody coming up.
Yes, my question is,
Step a little closer to
my question to you is, what role does your personal faith, and I'm not talking about religion, what role does your personal faith come into play in your success and daily application?
Well, I'll answer that because this happened just this morning at work. So somebody at work asked me a question, and I gave an answer that was wrong, and then we found out it was wrong, and I said, hey, call the other lawyer and tell him I was wrong. And she's like, can I really do that? And I said, absolutely, and tell him thank you for teaching me something new. Because I look at humility as people are so surprised when you're humble. I mean, they are just so blown away. But if I can tell somebody, you taught me something new, and that's important, and thank you for correcting me, because I'd rather be corrected and have the answer right, because that's better for everybody, than to stand on pride and always have to be right. So I think humility is probably one of the most underrated virtues, but I think it's so, so important, just like being quiet and being able to listen occasionally.
I'll take that in a little bit different direction. When you look in terms of personal faith, I think that as you're finding your career path or you're in it, if there is a disconnect, if something is not resonating for you, for instance, and we've talked about culture today, or if you look in terms of tone at the top of the house, the leadership with the institution or company that you work for, or the mission that you're on and what you're doing, creating or developing, if something doesn't connect or resonate for you, it's time to change. For me, throughout my entire career path, I knew, honestly, I wanted to be in financial services. I knew I wanted to make an impact on people's lives. Giving advice around being financially responsible is an amazing stress reliever. If you are financially independent, that takes one big load off your shoulders. So if I can give you, a segue here, be financially responsible early on, because that's something you won't have to worry about later. But to your point, and it's a wonderful question, is you've got to make sure that things align for you so that they connect, and that tone at the top of the house, the mission that you're on, it all works and resonates for you. If it doesn't, you need to fix that.
For me, it's a huge part. My personal faith brought me to Pensacola. I was offered many jobs, and when I came, I just knew this was a place that I needed to be. And I believe Carol said, be true to yourself. I am true to myself. Characteristics, I've said, attitude, that defines a winner for me. I don't hire people if I feel, if they can have the best doctorate, be the best reporter ever, but if they come in with a bad attitude, I know that's going to affect my community. So I am very big on integrity, honesty. I know my circle. I know that if I do anything wrong in my community, it looks bad on Pensacola and our WEAR. So I surround myself with like-minded people. And all of you young people, you need to do the same. Like-minded people. If you hang around whatever that is, that's what you're going to be. You need to get away from it, know your path, write your goals down, and be that. I'm just really big on that. My staff knows that, and it's helped me become the person that I am today.
Thank you. I think we have another question, Jennifer.
Hi there. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate it. I'm Jennifer McFerrin. I work in community development at Gulf Power Company. And had a brief question. We've talked a lot today about mentorship, about developing our careers, bringing out the best in one another. I was recently fascinated by a TED Talk I watched by Susan Calitano that talked about that missing 33% with women, that so often we neglect to develop that business, professional, financial acumen in our career development, in our mentoring relationships. Have you all found that to be the case, either in your workplaces or in your formal or informal mentoring relationships? And if so, have you had to seek that out intentionally, either through those mentoring relationships or through other avenues? What role has that played for you all?
Yeah, I mean, it is, great question. I think we talked about a couple things here about how we grew professionally, and honestly, I think probably the the best thing, one of the best things that have molded me has been mentors in my life, both men and women. And I'm now part of a mentorship program, and I'm mentoring for the first time. But it's such a powerful thing. I think it is one of the things that everybody should get involved in. It's something that you should hold very valuable, because there is something about the mentoring program in itself in which, you can, just the level of confidence that you have in another person, the level of confidence that they bring you, the ability to communicate openly and freely and confidentially with someone else is so important. It's just part of, developing your career and developing yourself, which I think for women with the 33% and that personal development, right, we've come so far. Right? We've come so far with it, but the statistics, as we heard at the very beginning, with more and more women graduating from college and more women entering leadership roles, executive roles, I actually think the gap's closing, at least as I see it and experience it. I have an all-female leadership team, at the PNJ, the first time that my boss's boss has had an all-female leadership team. I came from a female leadership team. I was the first female publisher at Calkins Media, where I came from, the first female vice president. So I think what I see, at least, and maybe it's just what I want to see, but I see that closing. I just see more and more females around me, which I'm happy to see.
I'd like to address that as well, and I'm going to tell you bluntly, yes. Mm-hmm. When you look in terms of, generally speaking, women with respect to business acumen and financial acumen, even though I work in financial services, it's interesting that you might have 20% of the workforce in financial services for a company who are actually advisors, and only about 10% of them are women, right? All the other support individuals, HR, marketing, et cetera, lots of women in those ranks, but actually giving the advice around finances, there aren't a lot of women. It's growing, but there aren't as many as we would like to see. Regarding the business acumen, I want to share a story. So I ran a team out on the West Coast. We had 120 portfolio managers. I had 13 teams, 120 portfolio managers. And of those 120 portfolio managers, and these were highly credentialed individuals, all of them except for 2 were men. And when I got out there, I was so perplexed by why we had so few women that were the actual portfolio managers. And what I learned over time in really spending time with these women is that they were very tentative about raising their hand for those opportunities. They had the same credentials, they had the same experience. All of the support people were the women, but the portfolio advisors were the men, and they were making considerably more money than those support people, okay? So we actually put together just training teams, coaching them on how to position themselves and to raise their hand and be comfortable in an interview talking about their accomplishments, because that's the key here. Women are so reticent in speaking up and sharing because they think they're bragging. It's not bragging. Put it in context, and you're simply telling them what you've done. But for me, it was a huge sense of accomplishment 2.5 years later to find that we had actually increased our ranks with those portfolio managers by 20%, with them being women. But women think differently, and we have to train ourselves to really put ourselves out there. And you've got to look for those mentors that will help you and that will push you to do that.
So we have another question here, and I think it's a great one given our topic. How do you overcome the feeling of being overwhelmed due to leadership roles and roles that you're juggling? Amy, do you want to take that one?
Well, there is a lot of feeling of overwhelm sometimes. I can attest to that just today. But I think, again, when you...
I think you need to tell the story about today, Amy.
Well, okay, so today I woke up. I have 3 kids at 3 different schools with 3 different start times and 3 different end times. And so I made 3 different breakfasts, 3 different lunches, took 3 kids to 3 schools at different times and still made it to work by 8:30, only to find out that my daughter put diesel in my car today, and she keeps calling me every 10 minutes to see if she take the other car to go see her boyfriend. And then I had a doctor's appointment and then a board meeting and then this, and it's just this and then that, and it feels like it's always something. And so, and that seems like a busy day, but it's not terribly unusual in the Remington household. That's just the way we rock and roll. So sometimes we do feel a little overwhelmed, but I think then it's important to let go of the things we can't do and that we cannot control. There are things that are just beyond our control that we can't do anything about. And I think, as I said earlier, it's okay to say, I don't know the answer, I'll get back with you. Or, when your door feels like it's a revolving door and people are knocking on your door, I've gotten really good at saying, I can't do that now, can you make an appointment? And then people are forced to come back at a different time when you do have a time slated to deal with an issue and you know what the issue is. Because if I didn't do that, I would get questions all day long and I wouldn't get any of the work done or any of the goal setting that we talked about. I wouldn't get any of those things done. So I've gotten very good at saying no to people or saying come back later or email me your question, or the best answer is always, to me, what have you done to solve the problem yourself? What research have you done? Don't come to me at the beginning. Come to me in the middle and tell me where you're really stalled. Don't come to me in the very beginning just because you want an easy answer.
For me, I go to Twitter. I love to tweet. Thank you for everyone who's tweeting me. Also, I've retweeted you. Also, I work out. I read. I take time for myself. Whenever I'm overwhelmed, I have a really crazy demanding job, and if I don't take time for myself, and even if I'm at work in the middle of a situation and I can't work out and I can't tweet, I'll just call my mother and she'll just tell me, God's got you, and she has no clue what's going on. I'm like, okay, bye, and I'll hang up. But you just have to find that peace within yourself, and what gives you peace. I like to read, tweet, and work out.
Yeah, I'll echo both. So I was in both situations, and thank God my kids are grown and gone, because it had, many years where you follow that career path where your 3-year-old's on your office floor at 10 o'clock at night sleeping, and you don't want to do that. That's what you don't want to do. You want to learn how to do what Dr. Ben said at the beginning. Maybe you're going to work in the evenings. Maybe you're going to work, on the weekends. But learn to find that balance. And I quickly evolved, not quickly, but I eventually figured out how important it was to have, I think somebody mentioned the girlfriend time, right? So you have the friend time and then worked into me time. And that personal time is so important to me. So every day, every night, and somebody said from 4 in the morning till 7, or whatever your time is, fit that me time is. Every day between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night, if I'm home by 7, I have an hour I work out. That's it. It's what makes me feel good. It's what, gives me, it makes me happy, right? So, and it just, it's that kind of release, that you need. You need to find that thing that's selfish, and then you own it. So I think it's a great balance for, your work life, your kid life. Take you time too. And hopefully something healthy for you is you time. Or tweeting. You could do that too.
So I discovered yoga about 5 years ago. And that has been my salvation, to be perfectly honest, because I was the worst at juggling and really managing the stressors of life. With career and travel and kids and husband and all the things that go on. And for me, it was really a defining moment when you're curled up in the corner of your office and you're going, I can't do this anymore. It's just too much. Don't get there. It's okay to take the scenic route with respect to your career, or downsize, or ramp down for a little while if you need to do that, or just right size it. But before you get to that point where you walk away, figure out what you need to do that's going to eliminate some of those stressors. For me, it was working out, just as we've heard here. It was taking that personal time. I love to read, and I'll tell you something I no longer do. When we go on vacations, my cell phone does not go with me. It stays home. My husband's cell phones to still come with us, and that's fine. If that's, he's good at managing that, but mine don't. They stay at home. So I really
can't do that.
I know. let me tell you, girlfriend, you will enjoy it after you get past the first
I can't even go to the island that
She's
doesn't have
having
an internet
massage
connection.
thinking about it. Can you tell?
I had to bring them.
But it takes a while to get to that point. But if you can do it, and you can do it early enough within your career, you will be so much happier.
And can I dovetail? I think that is such a great point. And I'll tell you what I did to right-size my life, because, like I said, I've got 3 kids and a husband, and that is my priority. I love my job, but my family is my priority. So 15 years ago, I went part-time, and I've worked part-time ever since. And sometimes when you take a part-time reduction in pay, you don't take a part-time reduction in compensation. You take an exponential reduction in compensation. But for me, it's been absolutely worth it. So that's what I had to do to right-size my life. And I'm so grateful I did it. I would do it in a heartbeat again if I could. It's been a great decision for me.
Outstanding. I'm just going to share it. It's chocolate. That's I mean, I love yoga and working out and tweeting and Facebook and everything else, but if all else fails, chocolate every time. So, just as we wrap up, I think we've got a few minutes left, and I think it goes kind of to something that Amy was talking about. When people are putting all these constant demands on you, being able to say, can you come back later, or shut the door. A lot of us work in kind of open plan office environments today where we may not be able to shut the door or tune out the noise. Have you been in that situation, or can you give some advice to people who maybe are in that kind of situation where there's the constant buzz of noise, people interrupting you, phone calls and so on? How do you deal with that?
For me, mine, I have an office, but the environment is very loud, and I look at them in the eye. I listen to what their concern is, and if they already have a solution, I tell them to put it in an email. I'll get back with them. But one of the things that I noticed that I used to do, I was very bad at, when they would talk to me, I would also be typing. So as a leader, don't do that. I learned not to do that early on. So what I do is I listen to them. I let them know that I'm really interested in what they have to say. If I have time, I'll take that moment. If I don't, I'll tell them I'll get back to them. And I always make sure whatever time I say I'm going to get back with them, I meet that deadline. Because you have to understand, as a leader, they're going to hold you to it. If you didn't, they're going to go back in the trenches. She said she was going to get back with me at 10, and she didn't. So you have to watch what you say as a leader.
Yeah, I was going to, media must be the same, right? And I've been in your TV station. So, I like that open environment. I mean, I came from, places where it was very closed off. So taking down those walls, I think it's symbolic. So you take down the walls of the offices, and the idea is that changes the culture. So I personally like that. It can cause some, it can cause some chaos. It gets loud. But there are so many more benefits to having that open environment. And when you need, to wind down and you need to have that quiet time, you just have to go and find it. And, for the most part, I think once you get to a certain level, obviously you have an office that, that you can close the door, and that, you can have private conversations, or just the private time and the wind down time. But as far as, what you said about the organization or the chaos around you, I don't look at it quite like that. I look at that, again, that symbolic nature of the walls coming down is what I see when I look on the floor.
So as we close, let's go down our row of wonderful speakers here, and just what is the one nugget of advice that you would like to give as a woman in leadership to all our women leaders who have given their time to be here today? What would you like them to walk away with?
I see a lot of young people staring at me or tweeting, not staring, but very interested and engaged. sorry, very interested and engaged. So I'm going to speak, I choose to speak to them. I was speaking with another leader, actually one of my mentors, and I wanted to get a certain place, and I was not going to be stopped. I did not come from a good background, but my past did not, it just didn't, that didn't make my destiny, as Carol said. I set my own tone, and I wrote my letter to success. So what I tell you, if you want to get somewhere, say if you want to take the president of UWF's job, don't tell her I said that. Write out a list.
It's coming available, by the way.
Yes, write a list, a path. Get someone who is in that particular job, get skill sets, qualities that you need to have, and start working towards it. When I was working towards my job, I thought I was on level 3. I thought I had made it, and I was just awesome. And I realized I was only on level 1. So I looked at that, I taped it on my living room, and I went to it every day. I made a dream board. If you don't write it down, and if you don't know your mission, you're not gonna know where you're going. But if your job right now, if your boss tells you, go do, I want you to write out an action plan, you're gonna go write it. So why aren't you doing that for your own life?
Okay, so my advice came from my mother-in-law. And I was debating whether to take a particular action that was kind of scary. And she said to me, fear and excitement feel exactly the same. And I thought that was really genius. So anytime I'm confronted with something that's really scary, like talking to 400 women at one time, I just have to tell myself, it's not scary, it's exciting.
I would say give yourself permission to take that non-linear career path. It's okay to not work and operate in lockstep where every role is exactly the most predictable one. You can get off that course. It's okay to take time off if you need to. Recognize you will have to possibly work a little bit harder to get back engaged and involved, but give yourself permission to do that if you need to do that. The other thing I would say is make sure you're really focused on your personal brand. Build that early and be very, very dedicated and true to that, because ultimately that is what defines you, and that's your reputation. Your network and that personal brand is how you get back in the door if you decide to take that scenic route within your career at some point.
I would say my advice would be to, if it scares you and it's not dangerous, run towards it, run at it. It's something that, you need to chase things sometimes, and you need not to fear. Had I feared as much as I did wanting something and wanting to succeed, I wouldn't be where I am today, because there was no reason I needed to change the direction of my career and give up something that I loved and something that I was really good at. But it allowed me to overcome my fear. It allowed me to grow. And really, what you're doing now is trying to find that personal growth. And those are the things you need to do to continue to grow in your life and in your career. And 30 years later, 25 years later, I'm still growing in my career. So run towards those things that make you afraid.
Outstanding. Well, I want to thank you again for being here today. Just the fact that you're here indicates to me that you are leaders, that you are willing to take the time to invest in your own leadership, that you realize that that's something that you need to do. And I hope that you've learned something today, at least one thing that you can take away, because I know that I have from all of our speakers, from all of our panelists, and especially from these wonderful ladies. So please give them a huge round of applause.